What's up, everybody? I wanted to go over something that I've been experimenting with for some time now. Uh, Something that I call the revival cup, or the revival of the tea, or Fùshēng Bēi in Chinese. Today I have some green snail. I'll probably show you a close up here, but it's like um, it's Bailushun. It's like a green snail. They roll them up into these little balls. It's actually pretty cool. The aroma that you're going to get from this tea dry is like, it's kind of funny, but it actually smells exactly like SpaghettiOs. Like when you open up a can of SpaghettiOs, that tomato base kind of smell, except dry, not wet, if that makes sense. Um, Once the leaves have been wet, you're going to get more of a like an old lake kind of smell. The first initial smell when the leaves are wet, to me, is very unpleasant. This is an Imperial grade tea, so it's a high graded tea. It was very costly. So I was kind of scared at first when I got that initial aroma from the wet leaves. But by the second infusion, all that oldness, that kind of that staleness goes away, and then it starts to bring out more of your orchids, maybe like a honeysuckle, a lot sweeter seaweed kind of smell. Um, and the tea itself, the aroma of the liquor is a real clean, brisk, almost like a windy day, a clear, pure, windy day. This tea is it's very good. It's very crisp. It has just the right amount of astringency. If you don't like astringency to your tea, you may not like this kind of tea. I like that little bit of bite, but it goes down easy. It's not like a hard astringency at all. Um, it's soft. It's very good. It's like clean, I guess is the best way I could put it. It makes me feel kind of like when I drink it in my mind, I'm feeling like excited, like I'm at a festival or some kind of like feast party kind of thing. Um, so it's a very great tea. Um, Back to the resurrection of the tea, or the resurrection cup of the tea. Like I said, this is something I've been experimenting with, and it's very, very unorthodox. This is not traditional in any way, shape, or form. I already have 6 grams of the leaves that I've already infused. So what I do is, I'm about to be on the 5th infusion for this. But what I have over here is I have the very first infusion. Now I don't know how well you can tell the color of the liquor, but it's just a pale greenish. It's, from the top, it almost just looks like regular old water. But so my very first infusion is in here. I kept it. Um, some people rinse all of their teas. I actually don't rinse my greens, my yellows, or my whites, unless I get them and like they're really dusty. But honestly, if you get a tea that's like that, it's a lower grade. It's not going to be, grade A tea. So sometimes I guess if it's really dusty, and I've had some sencha like that where I've given it a quick 2-second rinse. With this tea, you don't need to rinse it at all. In fact, you're going to kind of lose some of the sweetness. This was in early spring. It's one of the first flushings, so you're going to kind of lose that sweetness to the tea if you rinse it. So I've infused it. I've kept the first infusion in here. I'm now going to go to my 5th infusion in here. And this is kind of the important part to this technique. You have to kind of know what kind of tea you're dealing with. Your palate needs to be well. You kind of have to get to that point where you know that you're on your last infusion for that tea that you're using. Because if you go too far, this technique is not really going to work. Um, So make sure my water's getting up to temp here. So I've had this tea a few times, so I kind of already know how many infusions I can get out of this tea. So I know that this 5th infusion, it's basically 1.5 to 2 infusions shy. So like, let's say I was just going to do this straight without the resurrection cup. I would do probably this infusion and maybe one more. But with this, it's kind of, you're giving that life back to the tea. So you don't have to end the tea with this dullness or flatness or anything like that. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the last infusion and we're going to combine it with our first infusion. And everything in the first infusion, that sweetness, all the aroma, everything good about that first infusion is going to bring back to life this more dullness, more flat infusion. Now, like I said, as if you're a tea enthusiast, you're already going to know. First off, depending on who you are, you're going to think this probably is crazy. But I really encourage you to experiment with it. If you're like me, you kind of geek out about tea and you want to do like some cool experiments with your tea, this is a really cool experiment because you'll be completely surprised with some of these teas. Now, I've done this with some white teas and it doesn't work as well. It works best for green teas and definitely yellow teas. I've done it with some oolongs, but oolong is very, it's difficult sometimes with oolongs. You really have to know your oolong. If you have a specific oolong that you've had multiple times, you know exactly how many infusions you can get out of it, then this technique will work great for an oolong. It's going to blow your mind because you're going to have that last infusion and you're going to see the complete difference between what used to be your last, your last brew is now going to taste almost just like your first brew, the first that you tasted. And so you get two kind of pure brews out of that same tea. And it, that's why it's called what it's called, or that's why I call it that, because it brings the tea back to life. You get all of the body of the tea back. And I've done this with this tea on multiple occasions, so I already know where this last infusion that I had of this, it was, now this is going to change the temperature a little bit. I had this brew on 175, so really, if that's a big deal to you, then I get it. But honestly, this is just going to put it right back to where you want it to be. It's going to be perfect sipping temperature. Yeah, so just clean, almost like a clean linen, hanging outside, where you dry all your linens in the wind. If I gave you this and said this is the last brew of the tea, if you're a tea enthusiast, you've had many teas before, you're going to think immediately, no, you most certainly can get 1 to 2 more infusions out of this. Definitely 1. But you can't. You can't because you're bringing the first infusion in. It's a very awesome green tea, really. It goes down so smooth, but it has just the right amount of astringency that it hits both sides of your mouth and the back of your throat as it goes down. But immediately after, you get that wateriness in your mouth. The seaweed, it's there, but it's so subtle. It's more of that orchidish kind of honey. I don't like to say honey because it kind of gives you a false sense that it's super sweet, and it's not. It's subtly sweet, but it's like a orchid or like maybe a honeysuckle flower. so subtle, it just makes it perfect. Now, I've shared this with some of my contacts and some of my connections that I have in the tea industry, and they're like, "Well, where did you come up with this? Where did you think about this?" And I'm sure somebody down the line has done this. This isn't some grand, whoa, it's not some vast idea, really. Um, but mostly, when I make my teas, I like to meditate, really focus in and think about my life, how my life is doing, maybe what I have going on that day. But I'm also focusing on the tea. What tea is telling me? What story does this tea have? And what I mean by that is like, where is it sourced? Where is it grown? Who are the farmers? What are those? Who are those people? What value do they bring? The terroir, everything. I think about things like that a lot. That's what makes tea so interesting to me. And when you think about those things, it kind of reflects on life in and of itself. And a lot of what I kind of thought up of this has to do with my own personal faith, which I won't delve too much into here because this isn't really the platform to do that. But being a Christian disciple, having the first infusion mixed with the last infusion, the first and the last, Alpha and Omega, resurrecting. There's a lot of analogies that I've meditated that have reminded me of some of the scriptures that I follow and live by, and have kind of influenced and motivated me, I suppose, or influenced me to come up with this and to think about this. And at first, I just tried it kind of at first, and it wasn't really anything. It took a while because I had to, first off, it changes with every tea. But like this right here, I'm telling you, if you try this, there is something to this that kind of blows your mind, because you would never think that this was going to be your last infusion. You just wouldn't. It's just like the first infusion that I had, but I'm having it again. Now, some will say, well, yeah, but you didn't really have the first infusion because you had it in here. But a lot of people rinse their tea anyway, and they just dump it out, which is, totally fine if that's what you want to do. I just think that this gives you more depth. It gives you more story. It gives you more feeling. It gives you more connection. And it gets you further. You're drinking more. You get to experience more. And any more experience that I can get from tea is something that I like and desire. But yeah, that's kind of how I came up with it. I started experimenting with different teas. Didn't really work at the start, but then once I got more familiar with my infusion times, how many infusions a certain tea was going to last me, that's when it kind of all came together. And then so I started doing it. I've been doing it for quite some time now. And I've got it down pretty pat with the main teas that I drink often. If it's a brand new tea, obviously it would be a little bit harder for me. So this isn't something that I think that that you should just do just to do it, because you could kind of ruin your last infusion, depending on, because if you go one too many infusions, the tea's gonna, like, if I tried this again, I know that this tea right here, it's gonna be dull flat. It's gonna be pretty much, there's not gonna be much body to it at all. And if I would have done it in that, I'm basically just diluting down what was really good. So you really do have to get that timing right. That is important with this technique. But if you get it right, you can resurrect your tea. You can bring your tea back to life right before it's gone, and you can enjoy it all over again. Very unorthodox, but very effective for specific teas. And very cool, a very cool experiment. If you're somebody who just likes to experiment with tea, if you're like me and you have a certain tea, you try it at 170, 175, then 180, and you try it over and over again with 1-minute infusions, 30-second infusions, or whatever, you'll like something like this. This is cool to experiment with. You can write it down in your tea journal, and you can keep track of it, and you can get really good at it too. That's what's, in my opinion, what I like about it. And it is kind of impressive if you have friends that are into tea and you get one tea down pat and you say, hey, let me show you something. I'm telling you, at the very least, they might look at you crazy at first, but once they taste it, you're going to be a cool... Oh, getting some retro nasal here. Seaweed. It's all seaweed. You're going to be a cool guy or a gal if you can pull this off in front of people. They're going to be blown away. I assure you that. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Have a great day. Bishop's Tea and Botanicals, where tea meets tendrils.